Proverbs 24, verses 30 through 34 says, I went past the field of a lazy person, someone who had no sense, a slacker, as we would say. Thorns had grown up everywhere. The ground was covered in weeds and stone walls were falling down. And he says this, I thought about what I had seen and learned this lesson from what I saw. Looked around, came to some conclusions because of the evidence that was before him. And he says, you sleep a little extra, you nap a little extra, you fold your hands to lie down and rest. You twiddle your thumbs, as we would say. Little effort, more ease, and soon you will be as poor as if you had been robbed. I thought about what I had seen and learned this lesson from what I saw. So I want you to look around this world. I want you to see, I want you to examine, I want you to think about what you have seen with me. Have you ever noticed that when our culture, our world makes something easier, makes something more effortless, it's very hard to go back to when it was harder. It's hard to go back to when we had to put more effort and more time into it once it's been made easier. We like things to be streamlined. We like things to be easy, very little effort. Take, for instance, the Walmart pickup, the grocery pickup that you may use. Something that's made a lot of our lives easier. If you're a mom, anything to help you save time, not to get your kids out of the car 10 times, makes life easier. Some of you would be cat thrown in the bathtub, upset, mad if Walmart took away your grocery pickup. Because once something is made easier, it's hard to go back to the previous effort level. The previous level of expending more energy, more time, when previously you had to do it in such a time-consuming, effort-demanding way. When I look at my grandmother's cursive handwriting, I'm ashamed of myself. I hang my head ashamed of myself with how she writes in comparison to how I write. Because my grandmother's handwriting looks like the cursive font in Microsoft Word. It looks perfect. And back in her day, they were drilled in school about how your handwriting had to be neat, how it reflected on your character. My character must be awful because I have the worst handwriting. How you had to put effort into what you wrote down, how you wrote it down, how it looked. There was so much energy and time put into that generation when it came to handwriting. And if you were to ask me, and especially a kid these days, to write an entire 10-page essay in cursive, most would fail. It would look like chicken scratch. You couldn't read half of it because the easiest way, the most effortless way, is to type it up digitally, submit it to your teacher online, no pencils, no paper, no having to erase this word, redo that letter because it doesn't look good. Every letter of that Microsoft font is manipulated to be uniform and perfect when you punch that key. It's a form of writing that is effortless, easy. And once something is made easier, it's hard to go back to the previous effort level. How many of us want to go back to cursive handwriting on pieces of paper now that we have the ease of technology? How many of us want to go back to the days before Amazon, before internet orders, before next day shipping, the days before texting, before FaceTime, when we waited to call people because if they didn't answer the landline that day, you called them back the next day? How many of us want to go back to the days of that busy signal? We don't. We're here. We're advanced. We've developed ways that take less effort, that take less time, that are more streamlined, and we don't want to go back. Things that used to take so much effort are now effortless. Things that used to take up so much time are now done in a fraction of the time. Things are streamlined. And the things that become streamlined have shaved away from the landscape of life that we used to know. One of the consequences that's being talked about due to the coronavirus, people staying at home away from crowds, is what's going to happen to movie theaters after this. A lot of the new movies being released now during this quarantine, social distancing stuff, theaters have closed their doors. You're able to stream those movies straight to your home. You don't have to get up. You don't have to get dressed. You don't have to get ready. You don't have to warm up the car, drive 10, 20 minutes down the road, pay $20 in concessions. All you do is get online and boom, you're watching the movie for a heftier price tag, of course. But you're right there on your couch in your favorite chair and you don't have to move a muscle besides your thumb. So why would anyone want to go back to the days of going to a physical movie theater, sitting in physical seats with other physical people when you can stream those movies from home? Have you ever noticed that when advances in our culture make something easier, more effortless, less time-consuming, dare I say lazier, that it's very hard to go back to the time where you had to put more effort into it? Over the last few days of this social distance quarantine world we have become, I have seen more online sermons popping up on Facebook, more live streams on YouTube, on Vimeo. There have been more virtual Bible classes, virtual sermons, virtual worship services, little virtual devos, and it's been amazing to see all the ways the church has been meeting together in a virtual world, streaming the gospel, streaming praise, streaming biblical messages to millions of people throughout this whole coronavirus deal. The advances our culture has made in technology, online streaming ability, creating videos, creating these online platforms to share vast amounts of information has made things easier. It's allowed us as the church to meet together in our homes, worship together in groups of less than 10, and it has made things easier. Most people can have services at whatever time they desire on Sunday. They can watch an online Wednesday night class. They can scroll through and find a service or a sermon, and they come together in their living room and they watch. It's been the greatest thing for me to scroll through online preachers and listen to multiple lessons, even listening to a devotional by my kids, standing in front of the TV before watching a video, and having all this godly virtual wisdom at the tap of a screen, the push of a button. It has become effortless. But have you ever noticed that when advances and innovations make something easier and more effortless, that it's very hard to go back to a time where you had to put more effort into it? I don't know what's going to happen to the landscape of our world, of our nation, of West Kentucky. I don't know what's going to happen or what the world's going to look like after this coronavirus. I don't know what survives, what accelerates, what grows, what disappears. But what should never be replaced is our desire to meet together with our church families in the physical assembly. There should never be a time where we simply desire to stay at home, away from other Christians, away from the leaders of the church that we're supposed to be following, away from accountability. Yeah, there are those who can't come to the assembly because of work or health or travel. I'm not talking about that. And there are times like now when we're in a pandemic. I just want you to see a picture like Solomon did in Proverbs 24, verses 30 through 34. And it's a picture that's hard to see right now, that makes no sense to some people right now, because there are church meeting places on every corner in West Kentucky. There are church buildings everywhere in Marshall County, Callaway County, some that are packing the pews, others that are struggling to keep the few that they have. But what if, in our desire to seek a more effortless church experience, our desire to seek easier ways of worship, digital ways, that we find as the consequence in the future meeting places of Christians which were once filled with physical congregations of people, those buildings and structures are now covered in weeds and thorns and grown-up trees and uncut shrubs. And in seeking a church experience of little effort and more ease, we find ourselves robbed of relationships and closeness and fellowship and even accountability that only comes from meeting together, physically listening to each other, not virtual reality, but in the flesh, speaking psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, lifting up God in praise in the physical meeting together of the church. What if the landscape of the gathering place of churches goes the way of blockbuster video stores, maybe even movie theaters after this is over? Long before the virus ever hit the world years ago, I brought up to the college class one of the future debates of the generations of the church would be online church versus physical church, virtual meetings of the church versus church meetings in the flesh. And it's already been a conversation. But now it's one that is everywhere when you look around. And when this is over and this pandemic has gone away, this will be a conversation we need to have. Virtual church can be a great addition to your spiritual growth. It can help during times of spreading pandemics, when businesses, schools, gathering places are shut down. But meeting together physically cannot be abandoned, ignored, discarded, or even replaced when this is all over. Take a look around. See what you learn. Slow down and watch carefully to what is unfolding before your eyes. I once passed by a field, and as I looked, I learned a lesson.